Hey guys, just as we said, we've got our special guest, Miss Crystal Johnson. How you doing, Crystal?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Doing well, doing well.
Hey.
Um, it's yes, so it's going to be great. Yeah, talking to you about your career and about your music, and everything that you've been up to. Um, but like with all our guests, I always start off by asking where you were sort of born and raised so that we sort of get a sort of a geographic location.
I am from New York City, specifically Brooklyn. I spent time in Queens in my early teens and high school years, but I'm a Brooklynite. Um, been here.
Okay.
Well, I've moved around, but New York is my home. So
Okay. I think yeah, it's amazing because I guess um hip hop seems to hip hop is one of the sort of forms of music that really seems to put Brooklyn on the map. Um I'm sure it Brooklyn was well popular before hip hop, but what was it like growing up in Brooklyn?
Oh wow. Wow, there was a lot of musical influences in my life growing up in Brooklyn. I grew up specifically in the church scene and I come from a family of music. So I was always exposed to musicians and music and everything. My mom, she's a professional singer, and my parents both, musicians, singers, and my uncle was signed to CBS when I was a little girl. So I was
Wow.
always exposed to great people. Like I remember my uncle JC, he had a group and they sung background for Max Roach and Yusuf Lateef. And so I was around Yusuf Lateef as a little girl asking him why his head was bald, why he had a bald head and things like that. I remember going to Electric Lady as a little girl with my uncle, and I must have been about 7 or something like that, and seeing the mural at Electric Lady, and then fast forwarding like 20 years later and being there and remembering, oh wow, I've been here before because I, was here as a child with my uncle. So, Brooklyn has always contributed to my musical being, especially like I said in the church that I grew up in. It's a family church, but it was a mega church for back in the day, and uh, a lot of the Brooklyn gospel sound comes from my church, my childhood church, Institutional Church of God in Christ. They definitely created that Brooklyn bounce. So many legendary gospel artists, as well as secular artists, quote unquote, came from my church. So there was a lot of learning in that building because you had so many different types of singers. There was nothing for a James Cleveland or a Shirley Caesar or the Clark sisters or anybody to just randomly show up at my church. And then aside from the outside people, you had some phenomenal singers that basically I learned from.
During that time, then, as a kid, did you have an idea as to did it seem as if music was just going to be a destination, or was it just
Oh yeah, I knew that. I knew that early on. Like I guess I've always known. Again, I come from a musical family, so my brother he started playing the bass at 11. I was just it was just the music was a big thing. I was in a renowned children's choir, and we did a lot of professional gigs and stuff. And I was like 7 and 8 years old singing lead in the children's choir and stuff. So yeah, I always had a love for music. I remember my first time like feeling like I fell in love with music. I have two memories in my mind. Songs in the Key of Life.
was that Stevie
I
Wonder?
was yeah, I must have been like in the second grade or something like that. So reading was very exciting to me. And that album had a book with all of the lyrics and everything. So I would read to understand what he was talking about. And I remember feeling very moved and very captivated by his lyricism and the way he expressed himself. And then I remember in the back he signed his name. And it was so amazing to me. Like I'm 7 and I'm like, wow, I have a better handwriting than him. And I, understood that he was blind. So it was just this whole journey for me of like, wow. But I remember being moved by specifically Pastime Paradise. I remember that song like moving, the first song that ever made me cry around the same time, like 6, 7. And I would sit by myself and like listen to music and read the credits and stuff like that, whatever I could read at that time was DJ Rogers. He had a song on his album, one of his albums called Beulah Jean. And it was a song about a young lady that it was, him reminiscing on his past and when he was a kid. And it was a song about a young lady named Beulah Jean, who I guess he secretly had a crush on, but she didn't have the look. She didn't have the best clothes. Maybe she was a little homely, you know what I mean?
Mm.
She wasn't the most attractive woman, a young girl. She was a girl. They were in school. But she had a heart of gold, and he secretly admired her. Um, and then one day he went to school and he found out she died, and so that broke his heart. And I remember, like I said, about 7-ish, I cried listening to that song. So I knew music was definitely influential in my life and a motivating factor when you combine all of that stuff together.
Wow, that seems like a very music used to be. I used to assume music was very much of a love and happiness, and I didn't realize it could be that depressing and it to impact you at that young age.
I think it was just the emotions, like the
Mm.
emotion of it, the way he sung it. You really could feel that he missed her. And I felt so bad, like, wow, he lost Beulah Jean. It was like, I encourage you to listen to the song. It's a DJ Rogers song. It's not one of his most popular songs, but it was the first song that ever made me cry.
Wow.
So I don't think of it in terms of being depressing. I think of it like more, I'm definitely an empath of sorts. So I think it was my connecting with someone else's feeling and hurt and sympathizing. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I had that at an early age. So
The how was it like singing in church then as a young child? Because I think one of the most famous people we've seen actually is Whitney and Aretha singing in church and then going on to have a career. So, well, what was it like for you singing where church just seems to just produce the most amazing talent?
like I said, yeah, I agree with you. And on to compound that, like I said, my church was definitely known for their music. I think they recorded over 30 albums, performed at Carnegie Hall. A lot of even me going on later years to Broadway was due in part to that church. So they're like, I guess if you would compare to today, they would be like what Kirk Franklin is to the
Mm.
gospel music. That's the type of church that I came from. So I was definitely exposed to so many amazing artists. Actually, I wound up meeting DJ Rogers maybe about 12 years later at my church. So that was like a funny thing. The church definitely influenced me. My family, everyone's musical. Everyone sings. Everyone plays an instrument or writes or has some gift of music and arts.
I know you went on to get into collaborate with hip hop artists. How was hip hop growing up then in Brooklyn as a when it was coming up on the scene?
Oh wow. New York as a whole was infected by the impact of hip hop. I do remember being a kid and seeing them out in the park and doing all of the setups and stuff, but I was a kid, so I didn't really know. Um, but I remember like there were certain songs that kind of stood out and let me know, like, wow, I like this. Like Hotel, Motel, Holiday Inn, songs like that, and Furious uh, Five and all of that. Curtis Blow. It was just very electrifying. It gave us an identity. It impacted the way we dressed. Like we wanted to have our leads and our Pumas and Adidas, and at this is in junior high school. So by the time we got to high school, we were so impacted by hip hop. It kind of like exceeded our parents' budgets because we wanted the bombers and the sheepskin and the 3-finger ring or the 2-finger ring and the bamboo earrings and all of this stuff that was a little expensive for your parents to buy while they're paying mortgages and stuff. But we wanted it because it was hip hop, the kazals and whatever the fashion was, we were all trying to do that, every kid. So it encouraged us to, be independent to an extent because not everybody's parents was buying them all of that. I bought my own sheepskin. I bought my own bomber because I had a job. So it inspired us to go and be independent. We come from an independent, like that first generation of hip hop babies. We are definitely very independent and have a strong will and belief that we could do anything because you can see how it manifested in hip hop. It's just a thought.
Yeah.
But kids was like, I'm gonna do this, as something just to, even the origin of hip hop, keeping kids out of mischief. You know what I'm saying? And children that probably had never been told that they had something, they had a future. They was just having fun and finding a way to have fun on the city's dime by plugging in the DJ equipment into the light posts and stuff, you know. So, you know, just having that freedom to believe and dream is why you have hip hop, is such a marketable brand. It's because they were like putting my Adidas. We like invited other mediums to enjoy with us, even before we knew it was a business move. You know what I mean? So all of those things I think impact our generation specifically in terms of being entrepreneurs, business people, you know.
But
So
also,
hip hop for me was definitely a part of my child.
but being a female, could you, I mean, I know it was dominated by a lot of male artists. Could you see yourself as an artist, or was that were you still seeing yourself as a singer growing up? What was that
Oh
divide?
well, at 11, I started doing theater. I landed the role as the lead in Mama I Want to Sing, which is a classic off Broadway play to this day. I think Sierra played the role that I played in the movie adaptation of Mama I Want to Sing. And I was the original lead to do that in a workshop production at 11.
Wow.
So I was exposed to another level of arts by doing that at 11 and 12 years old. It just changed my life. At that point, I knew that I was going to be in the arts. I went to school one day a week and picked up my, curriculum and everything. And I was home, resting my voice to perform that evening, at 11 and 12. So after that, I thought school was a waste of time. I thought at that point, yeah, I definitely knew. Oh yes, I'm in the arts. I'm in the arts. It just manifested itself at that time in theater. To be doing musicals. I also did Porgy and Bess with Teresa Merritt, um, who played. You can look it up. She's a legend. I did Porgy and Bess with her, and then I also was on Broadway before I turned 20 in a play called Gospel at Colonus. It's an adaptation about the story of Oedipus, but it was done in a way as if it was a book in the Bible, and the star of it was Morgan Freeman. So now I'm 15 to 19 exposed to, this play. We did BAM in Brooklyn. There was different phases before it got to Broadway. But in that, I was surrounded by the best of the best, the original Five Blonde Boys from Alabama, the original Soul Stirrers that Sam Cooke came from, um, Morgan Freeman and Robert Earl Jones, which is James Earl Jones' father. I'm like performing with these greats every day. And then my mother was in the play as well. So, and my little sister. So it was just a little melting pot of art and learning. So there was other things that I did leading up to like being signed as an artist and doing the hip hop. I was doing theater. After I did Broadway, I kind of didn't, I was so used to doing theater like through my preteens and teen years that after Broadway, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do songs. I want to do demos. I want to do an album. So I stopped pursuing theater, and went to started doing like a lot of demos for whether I got $75 or $100 or did it for free. I was just trying to build my catalog. Wow. And at this point, I'm like 19 or something. I've been on my own since I was 17. So, it was like I've always been a hustler. I knew what I was going to do. You know what I mean? From the time I graduated, leading up to, like I said, I think the Broadway thing happened when I was 19 or 18. Wow. So way before I really got into the music business, I was already seasoned in arts. So,
Hello, Crystal.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. I have a question for you. My name is Sheldon. I'm Nami's partner. Just jumped on. Hi. I got a question for you. You go back, because I was doing some research in your background, and you kind of filled in the gaps just now. And when I look at what you were doing, everything that you described, it takes me back to you kind of come from a musical pedigree, a historical pedigree, because you're kind of doing the thing because you're from Brooklyn. Stephanie Mills is from Brooklyn. So you guys have the theater situation. Then there's the whole the gospel aspect of it. You got the Aaron Hall, Hezekiah Walker situation. So are you, and then of course, you talked about DJ Rogers, and of course, you related to the Wilson family,
Yes.
KC, Kansas City, Oklahoma, New York situation. So are
I
you?
was actually born in Kansas City, Missouri. I just don't know anything about it because I've been in New York all my life. But my mother's roots is in the Midwest. So my brother, who's older than myself, and my sister, who's younger than me, they were both born in New York. I'm like Dorothy from The Wiz. But yeah, you're right. I come from a pedigree of music.
So when you look at that time period when you're making the transition into demos, describe the scene in New York at that time, because you're coming from this theatric gospel background, you have this musical pedigree, people who you're related to in your family. So all of that is kind of like all in your DNA. So now
Yeah.
you're shifting into wanting to do demos, but describe the scene in New York around that time. So I would say probably it may be early, maybe going into mid 90s. How
Well,
accessible?
even before that, I'm a little older than
Okay. So let's
so
so let's say
I was
let's say
that
late
whole
80s,
era of me doing demos and trying to get put on and all of that. That was the late 80s. Like I was living in Queens at the time. So my focus kept me safe because that was definitely the crap epidemic and I was on my own. So I could have definitely veered off into other things, had I not had the focus of knowing what I wanted to do. But I just borrowed from everything. My uncle, his name is Sam Johnson. He's a legend. They sampled his stuff on Jadakiss We Gonna Make It. That was my uncle. And so during that time, we didn't live far from one another. So he basically mentored me. And after I would get off of work, I would go and like, now they call it shedding. Back then it was jam sessions. And we would just, I was developing and learning how to write at 17, 18 in the late 80s. So by 90, I went out to California because a lot of my family's out there. My mom had relocated to Cali. And, you know, I definitely that Cali had a music scene or whatever. Out there, I hooked up with my cousins, Andre and Brian Wilson. They had a group at the time called 4D. It was basically the Gap Band sons. It was Andre and Brian, who's
Hold on a minute. Stop there.
I'm sorry.
4 Deep.
Yeah.
They did a demo, didn't they? That never got released.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did.
I can't listen. You just revealed something here that's just a big new Jack Swing mystery.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. It was definitely in that era. This was 90 when I worked with them when they were signed, and I remember we did a lot of this. I was doing background and stuff with them, and we did a lot of stuff at Solar Record Studio. What's his name? Dick Griffey Studio. I don't remember the name of it, but it was the same studio that Dre and all of them wound up, getting their start out of with Suge and everything. So
was it Can-Am? Was it Can-Am?
Can-Am. And it's so funny because I just spoke to my cousin Brian this morning. He's working on some stuff. They did a residency, Gap Band 2, in Vegas not too long ago. But yeah, so it was basically Charlie's son, Loretta, which is the Gap Band's sister. They have, she has sons that are so dope. One of them's name is Black. Wow, he has the same name as that heavyweight guy that does rock. Oh my God, what's his name? But his real name is Drew. But he's produced a lot of stuff like for Snoop and all of them. I'm trying to think of the name. Jelly Roll, but not Jelly Roll, the white guy. It's Jelly Roll, a hip hop producer from Cali. But he's my cousin. His name is Drew. And so his brother, Charlie's son, and Andre and Brian had a group called 4D. Yeah. I was out there. They had me, working and doing a lot of demos and again, learning some more about writing, singing background, and all of that kind of stuff. I was about 20 at that time. It was like at 90. So
that demo tape is out there somewhere. I didn't realize you were singing on it. It is out. You can listen to it on YouTube. Some of the tracks from it.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah. I asked my cousin. I just spoke to him this morning actually because he was asking me. He's working on a song, and he was asking me, to give some little creative input or whatever. So, wow. Actually, I wound up going back to New York after that. I realized I wasn't really an LA girl. And I missed hip hop, to be honest. And when I say hip hop, I don't really mean just the music. I just mean the culture. It was so dynamic. It was so infectious. Like I said, it gave you that mindset to believe that you could do anything as a young chocolate girl like myself. And up until that point, I had already, seen that come into fruition. I'd done everything that I wanted to do. So to me, there was no stopping. So I came back to New York. And I was singing background for God for like a hot minute until I got fired. And this was their second album, God.
Oh, okay. I think so I guess just before we get there.
I have a lot of stories, so I'm sorry if I'm going.
No. So
I'm like an artist. My whole life has been filled with, I guess for people that don't know, it might seem like I'm name dropping, but
no. But this is the perfect place. This is the perfect place. So don't worry. I think because I know Steve and Sheldon will have plenty of questions around a lot of the artists that you worked with. But I guess the question that I had just before we get there was quitting theater. It felt like that was a secure revenue generating job. why did you give that up? Because theater seems to be where everyone wants to go and do Broadway and off Broadway. So why
Right,
give
but at the time, like I said, I started at 11.
Okay.
I was a lover of singing since I can remember, as far as I could. You know, like I told you, I knew that I had an intimate thing with music from the time I heard songs in Kid Life from DJ Rogers. I was a child. I was like literally second and first grade, having a personal relationship with music. I didn't really understand what I had at my hands, at my disposal in the theater world at the time. Because I had been doing it from 11 to 20, you know, on and off, you know. Of course, school was a factor, so I wasn't like constantly working. But from 11 to 20, I did 3 plays that are major. You know, so I'm signing autographs at 11. They have my posters up in my junior high school, which is middle school. So at 20, I like my friends, like they knew like, oh, she does plays, but they didn't really like know. I wanted y'all to know, like, if you on the radio. I was silly, you know what I mean? But I loved music. Now I'm back in the theater, which is, I guess we'll get to
Yeah, we'll
eventually.
get to
I wound up going 360 and realizing like, hey, that's a passion and that's where you started. So actually I'm doing a play this coming fall, an off-Broadway play that I'm excited about. But yeah, I didn't know, like, you have Oscar-winning actors and actresses and their main thing is to do Broadway. And here I am, 18, 19, doing Broadway. And I'm like, I don't want to do
this.
So as you're inching forward into hip hop and obviously R&B is around the corner, do you feel like your experience put you in a situation where you arrive to the music industry fully formed? You weren't jaded because you had already had a creative life where you're surrounded by all of these great talents, you know, plus your musical pedigree, your background. So unlike a
Right.
lot of people, when they arrive, and you're gonna, I guess, talk about the demos in a few, that's their first introduction. But you've already had, let's say, 7 to 10 years of doing what you're doing. So do you think that it helped you in terms of your self-concept? You weren't necessarily jaded, you know, by an industry, you know, the stars in your eyes.
It definitely saved me from a lot of walking into a lot of doors that I didn't know. Like I remember in the play, it was a song called "Know When to Leave the Party," you know. So as an 11-year-old, I'm asking my mother what the subliminals of everything is. Again, my mother's a professional singer. She was singing with Max Roach and all of these jazz legends and gospel legends. So I knew that I could go to my family for reference. You know what I mean? I would hear, you know, I hear hustle. I'm hearing, oh, don't do this deal. And I had so many deal offers before I even got really in the game, like 17, 18. But I was like, oh, I don't think that sounds like enough money, you know, because I did have a little bit of knowledge and I wasn't starstruck. You know what I mean? I had people like Yusuf Lateef wanted to be my godfather. I'm watching my mother singing with Max Roach, and I'm around all of these people, you know, just musical people, and they treated me as a peer because I was a little girl singing. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like, oh, I'm looking from afar. It was like, Crystal, come here. This is my niece. She's bad. You know, my uncle would have me go to the session. So I was doing sessions at 7 and 8 years old because I was in a choir, you know. So yeah, that's a very good question because by the time I signed like to Uptown and prior to signing, when there was this big bidding war and all of that, I was not like so anxious. Like I did kind of have an understanding. I think the issue was at the time, I didn't know how powerful my voice was. And then being a female, you know, is very, you know, male driven, this industry, especially back then. I didn't even know to tell, like when I was signed to Uptown with Andre, I don't think I ever told Andre I had done Broadway. I don't think I ever did. Like, I don't think we ever had a conversation, which that's very valuable as an artist, as an asset. I didn't talk about that at that era in my life. It was like, I'm an artist now. That, had I had a little more wisdom, I would have included that into the factor of who I am as a brand, but I didn't even talk about it. So what it did is it made them look at me, short of them knowing that I was affiliated and relatives to the Wilsons, because that's how I met the whole Uptown family, is through my cousin. Short of that, they were probably looking at me as this new person that could be molded, manipulated, and very, green. And I really wasn't. So there wound up being conflict because I did have knowledge. I just didn't really let them know, like, who I really was. I didn't know at the time. Like, I don't know. I was young. I was mad young. I was 22,
But when you
21.
look back at when you look back at that time, do you consider that a strength or a weakness? Because sometimes you don't need to let people know what it is that you know, especially when you're looking at like contract negotiations and things like that, even though you have the support system and everything and you're fully aware. But looking back, do you consider that a strength that you had to where you couldn't, so you wouldn't allow yourself to be
I think that's why I
manipulated?
didn't say things, is because I didn't want to come off like grand, like I think I'm better. Because again, it wasn't so much hip hop, it was the culture of hip hop. We were all young and having fun. And I didn't want to come into the equation like she's Miss Know-It-All, or, this diva or whatever. So I didn't really talk about the stuff. And I guess it did help me to a degree. It's a gift and a curse. It helped in some aspects. It didn't help in other aspects. It helped in the aspect of, me having bidding wars and being able to know how to negotiate. It helped in the aspect of me just kind of knowing, like, what not to do in certain instances or whatever. It didn't help in the instance of like I said, you're young, everyone wants to be on ground. So as soon as you voice an opinion or you know something, I knew a lot more than my peers at the time. My peers at the time was Puffy. My peers at the time were, Christopher Williams, Mary J. Blige, Jodeci. I knew more than them. Maybe not Chris, because Chris had already, had albums out and stuff like that before I met, before he was on Uptown. But for the most part, I knew a lot. I had been around a lot of people. I wasn't starstruck. It wasn't like, oh my God, there's such and such. Because I had been around such and such all my life. Whereas when you're young, yeah, it is, you're very impressionable, and so a lot of people want you to be starstruck. They want you to, you know, drink the Kool-Aid, and then it's like, why is she acting like she not? So
Yeah, I mean,
a lot more mature, I think, now in hindsight when I look, like I can remember being in sessions and stuff would go on. I'll go to sleep. I'll be like, wake me up when y'all ready to, like, working with Horace, and I'd be like, wake me up, and they used to laugh because I'd be asleep while everybody else was doing what was new to them, and I wake up, they wake me up 3 o'clock in the morning, and they would be so amazed at how I would wake up and still be able to sing after being asleep. So yeah, things
So
like that kind of kept me out of the in crowd, even though I never had a problem being in the in crowd. I kind of just was a little mature because I had been around. Like, I'd already gotten burnt by the industry by the time I was, through
so when you
theater.
look at that, so when you look at that time, of course, we're going to kind of go into everything, but just now being an adult, looking back, and you saw like a lot of peers that who you were interacting with, who were your colleagues or whatever, that you might have known more. You had more trained experience. You had more theatric experience. Everything. You were prepared to be in this industry, where a lot of your peers, it was more about, they might have had more raw talent compared to the
Right.
talent that you had. It was fully developed. It was
Right.
pretty much, you might as well say, it was probably advanced
Right.
more advanced,
Compared to my
and
peers, yes.
yes, but your
Yeah.
peers would be the ones that kind of, I don't want to say shot to the top, but they got the looks, they got the opportunities. But when you saw what they had to go through to navigate
Yeah.
those opportunities, do you feel vindicated? Do you feel like
Oh,
that?
absolutely. I've been an independent artist. This is so funny because I've been an independent artist since '96. And to watch the growth. When I was independent, nobody was independent. They were looking at me like I was crazy. Like, why are you not? I never had a problem getting the deal. I never got shelved. It was just a conflict of me not wanting to do those things, which I definitely don't regret. I was very bold and very sure too at the time, not knowing that I was saving myself from a lot of stuff. Um, so yeah, I definitely can see now. I saw back then because I understood the game. You know what I mean? I was a kid, but I was a little wise for my age at that time. Not just even because of what I experienced, but I just think that same little girl that knew how to cry and be attached to that song at 7, I was that same, young adult that had discernment and was able to see certain things. And I've always been a free spirit. So anything that interferes with me being free and being able to live from the inside out, I run from. I'm able to articulate that now. I wasn't able to articulate that at 2021, but that's always been the core of who I am. So it was easy for me to leave those situations and say, nah, I don't even want to do this anymore. I'm a rebel. That's what they thinking. But I'm an artist. I'm an artist. That's all I know is the art. So now it feels good because I definitely feel like whether people know it or not, I paid ways for certain independence for artists, because like I said, I was doing it in '95 and I'm paying the same amount of money for studio time that major recording, back then you had your home studio where you did demos, but you wouldn't, I mean, like now I can do a whole project at my crib. It wasn't like that then. I had an 8-track. I still needed to take it to a major recording studio and do, so I'm paying money. I was writing and doing a lot of features and stuff at the time to afford me to be able to go in the studio and produce my own stuff and everything. And I had to like accept, okay, this is your path. So don't look for fame. Like you're going against the grain. So I accepted that like a long time. I accepted that at 23, 24.
Okay, I guess just before I mean, because you're talking about leaving Uptown, but we have to still try and understand.
Get to Uptown, right?
Yeah, yeah, get into
Mm-hmm.
Uptown. But if we just flash back slightly, when you decided to become an artist, who were the artists that were out? Because that were around that time that you thought, okay, you know what, this is who I.
Really, aside from Whitney Houston, it was like a bunch of ladies that were old enough to be my mother that was inspirations to me in that era. You had Shaka, you had Patty, you had, you know what I mean? They were all older women except for Whitney. So I think Whitney was really the like prototype for me. Like I was like, oh, Whitney Houston, because she could sing and all of the things that you spoke about earlier, coming from church and it's funny that the other gentleman even mentioned Stephanie because her brother went to school with me and my brother. We come from the same area. Community in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. So I believe she went to my same public school, elementary school. And I did see the Wiz at about 6 or 7 years old. My mom had a job that afforded her the opportunity to get tickets to a lot of plays. And so I saw uh, The Wiz, I saw Timbuktu, I saw the Raisin, all of these plays when I was little, I didn't know I was gonna go into theater. So it's all like relative. Yeah. So I've always had like an admiration for Stephanie. That was enough. Like in the mid to the late 80s, who was out? Melba Moore, like a lot of older women, aside from like, I guess like Lisa. But that wasn't like my style, I'm more of a soul singer. So that was more hip hop. I really, before hip hop, I'm a singer. You know, I'm R&B soul first. You
Well,
know, just hip hop to me is more the culture. And then the fact that I'm first generation, it's like hip hop is my cousin. We grew up together. So I'm definitely gonna have that, you know, but soul and R&B first, yeah. And the only one when I was like as someone to look up to was Whitney, probably.
but then you know,
What's her name? I used to like the girl from Atlantic Star. I used to like
Barbara Wilson.
Sharon Bryant.
Okay, sure.
Sharon
taking too
Bryant.
much time to make up your
Yeah,
mind.
Sharon
Yeah, like
Bryant.
people like now you got me thinking. Oh God, I used to want to be her so bad. Uh Shirley Murdoch. That's when I graduated high school when Shirley Murdoch came out. I was like, oh wow, I love Shirley. The reason why I produce music is in part to three women: Twinkie Clark, Angela Winbush, and Patrice Rushen. So, you know, yeah. So those were the ones that were my influences, basically, in a nutshell, at that era of
But
my life.
then when you think about the mid to late 80s, the music started to become a lot more almost merging with hip hop. So you started to have a New Jack Swing. We started having Karen White. So, you know, that type of, Pebbles.
Yeah, Karen. Yeah, she definitely was. That's the
Yes, but so I'm
what's the other
wondering,
one? She went on
we
to
had
do a
Jody
lot of stuff
Watley.
with yeah, Jody. What's the one that went to do a lot of stuff with Tyler Perry? Cheryl Pepsi Riley. Those were the ones that were out in the late 80s.
Yeah, yes.
Melissa Morgan.
So around this
Yeah.
time, what were you? Where were you when that type of the music? So because you go from an era where the the Stephanie Mills and the Shirley Murdoch, they're singing soulful type of songs, but we're getting more of the up-tempo, New Jack type of stuff with another
You mean
younger.
like maybe in the like early 90s, you
No,
mean?
no, this was probably 89. So if you think about when Karen White came out, so that's all the Secret Rendezvous, Pebbles,
I mean,
and
yeah, I definitely like Karen as an artist. That was not the direction I felt like I wanted to go as an artist. To me, like I said, Whitney was more like that was who I kind of liked. But then I liked people like I loved Patty Austin and more mature. You know, I'm definitely jazz influenced too. So
okay, okay.
I was all over the place musically. You know.
But then how did you then look? Because when you came back from Los Angeles after working, you didn't fit in a way, you didn't enjoy the environment. How did you go around looking for your first break in New York when you got back?
It wasn't even like looking for a break. It was like, you know, working. I've always had, I guess, you know, the reputation to be known as a singer. So I never had a problem getting work or getting in certain doors or whatever because I've been singing all my life. So it wasn't really like looking for work. I guess work looked for me, kind of. I don't know. I know for an example, like I said, I worked with God for a minute. I was singing background with them for a summer. And then after that, my cousins Andre and Brian were here in New York working with Ernesto Velasquez, who was like one of the first Latino artists. Like they were onto something if they would have really stuck with Nesto before the whole Latino big craze came out. So they were working with him and they called me and they were like, I want you to do some writing and some, you know, stuff they knew me to do, background vocals and more vocal production at the time. So I started working with them with Nesto. We were at the studio. want to say the name of this Giant. And of course, you know, there's different rooms. So we were meeting all type of people, like 3 boys from Newark, which was Kayama and Ike Lee and Kayama Griffin and Vincent. You know, they were like working in the other room, and you know, you just know how it is, different people coming through or whatever. So I guess whatever I was doing with Nesto, Tara Jeter, who used to be in the girls, um, who was, I think, Albie Shure's group. She was now A&R. She was an A&R rep at Uptown. And so she was, I don't know if she was Ernesto's A&R, but she definitely was an A&R rep there. And she would be at the sessions and she, you know, like my voice and my style and everything. And I think she's the one who told Andre about me, or maybe her and my cousins collectively, like, yeah, my cousin, blah, blah, blah. So when I met Andre, he already was familiar with my voice because of the stuff that I had done with Ness. And then I started working with Horace, who was a new artist at the time. So everybody was kind of new and working together. So I guess if that answers your question, I kind of.
What year was this though? What year was this?
That was like 91. Oh, I'm forgetting a real big part of when I came back. Okay, so also on the hip hop side of things, I had gotten called by Cassandra Mills to write a song. Who she was at Giant at the time. She was the vice president, I want to say, and they were doing a soundtrack for a Kid and Play movie, and she wanted me to write on it. So she hooked me up with Howie T. Hitman Howie T. You know, he's definitely a big producer on the hip hop scene, Special Ed and Real Roxanne and oh God.
Was that the Class Act soundtrack?
Class Act, yep. I got my first song placement. It was a song with Tara Kemp called Anything You Ask For.
I was just about to ask you that pre-Uptown, there's a couple of artists that I think you worked with. One of them was Tara Kemp, and the other one was a guy called Grady Harrell, who was signed to RCA. Did you do anything
wow,
with Grady
yes,
Harrell?
I sure did. Yes, Grady Harrell. Because when I was in Cali, because Andre Cleveland, he had a production company. He had what's her name? It's the girls' night out, night out. I can't remember her name.
Oh, forgot her name. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Very pretty girl. She kind of looked like Dorothy Dandridge. Well, he had signed her. Andre wanted to offer me. That was one of those deals.
Tyler Perry. I can't remember. Not Tyler.
Tyler.
She was signed to RCA.
Yeah,
I forgot.
Tyler something.
Yeah.
Very pretty girl. And my good friend wrote that song, Sherry Byers. And so I hooked up with her. I started writing. Andre Cleveland wanted to sign me. And that's how I met Grady, because Grady was signed to Andre. And I worked with them. I worked with Keith John, who was like he's like one of the staple singers with Stevie Wonder. And we were working together and everything. But like I said, I just didn't, I mean, I had a lot of fun in Cali, but I'm a New York girl, so I wound up coming home. But yeah, Grady. And then I also did a song out in Cali with an artist named Anthony King, AK. He was on Electra. And we did a duet, the AK Experience, yeah.
Yeah, he had a single out called I Can't Stand It.
Yeah, I'm singing all the backgrounds on that whole album.
Oh, wow.
And we did a duet called I Love You, You Love Me Too.
I need to dig that album out.
Yeah, so that was the first feature I ever really did. Kyrie Shaheed, he did a lot of production, hip hop production for like a lot of Northern California artists. So we did that album in Vallejo, California. So that's something else I did in Cali. So I was working the whole time I was in Cali. I was working. I that Sal Benford, I was doing a lot of work. I never really had a problem getting work. But then when I came back, I got the song placed with Tara Kemp. Howie and I started doing so much stuff together. I think I've written the most body of work with, as far as a producer, with Howie. That's where I really learned how to write. As a hip hop producer, a lot of times he would come to me with it could be a 2-bar loop. I had to make that stretch. I couldn't repetitiously sing the same melody. So it's like, dang, how can I take this and flip this for 8 bars? And, like I'm pulling on my musical ear to not sound repetitious. And that's how I learned how to really write, is working with Howard T.
You
Wow.
know,
So
I
can
guess
you?
just during this time though, you think about working in Cali, the actual business side of this, because you're placing songs, you're doing backgrounds. Did you know that side just as when you're navigating in those early days, the business side of publishing and the splits and features and things?
I knew a little bit. I was on, like, again, at this time, I'm 19, 20, I'm a kid. So when I came back to New York, once I got that song placed, that's when I started learning. And it was good timing, I guess, because I wound up signing to Sony Publishing, and my rep was Suzette Williams. She was just now transitioning from marketing and stuff from like MCA and that whole family to publishing. We were friends, so she was my publishing rep, but I was learning the game with her.
Mm.
So I learned about publishing. I learned about all of that stuff just because I was a new art. Like I knew enough to take business serious. Like, don't just sign this, know what you're signing. How many song deal is this? And what is a song? Some people think a song is just, oh, I wrote. No, a song is 100%. So if you have a 5-song deal, that means they were 500%. I was able to learn a lot of that, like I said, because my rep was new at the game of publishing as well. So we learned together. I was able to leech off of what she was learning, and absorb it and let it work for me. So I had a publishing deal before I even had my record deal as a result of the song that I got placed on.
So even when you were doing stuff with Howard T, you already had your publishing in place to make sure you were protected.
No, I got my publishing deal as a result of working with Howard.
Okay.
I had
And it's
how we wanted to what was it? Can't remember, but there was a few publishing companies that wanted to sign Almore. Yeah, I can't remember. I know that I can't. I'm forgetting names, but I had a few different publishing deal offers. I wound up going with Sony.
Okay.
Now, I have a question for you. Obviously, you're working with a lot of people, and unlike you probably heard these stories before where you've had singers and they're working with producers, and producers will try to sign them to like these production deals in hopes of, the revenue was flowing through the producer. And even though it's on the strength of that singer's talent, that singer is kind of they're not getting paid. So you were kind of, it seems like based on what you're describing, you were able to kind of pivot and not be one of those singers
Right.
signed
I turned down those
through a
deals. I
producer.
remember Donald D, he had this song, his brother had a song called The WAP. They offered me a deal that the girl singer Malira wound up taking. Like, I could look at
Yes.
different artists and say, oh, that was the deal I turned down. But I knew enough to know, like, that's a third party, like, so a lot of these with the thing with Andre Cleveland now, it was a production deal. Donald D, I think his name was.
Yes.
I've had
Yes.
like maybe 4 or 5 different, production deal situations that came my way, but I knew that was like, I knew what that was. I knew what that was. Yeah, I knew enough to know. No, you want to be proper to the label.
So,
So I
so
I I, I kind of shot away from them, and like I said, then Andre came. by the time Andre came around, Andre from the very beginning knew he was like, he saw star potential. He was like, oh my God, you're my witness. You know what I'm saying? Like but at the time there was a gentleman by the name of Paris Davis who was A&R and at Epic, being that I was a Sony writer, you know, and that's when Sony had just taken over from CBS, and you know that bought that whole thing. So they had a lot of money, but very limited acts, artists that were signed. Like I think at the time, the only writers that were signed to Sony Publishing was myself, Michael Jackson, and I believe Mariah Carey. Like that was like I was in there that early on in the game. So Paris Davis had offered me a demo deal at first. And I'm like, let's see. And then when Andre came around, he offered me a deal. And then somehow or another, like, I don't know, after a while, I had like every major from Gerald Busby to Quincy Jones to Tommy Mottola and all of these people who are after me, you know. But it really started with Paris Davis and Andre. And because I had been working so much with Uptown, like I want to say that was around the time I did Got Me Waiting with Heavy. And I was doing stuff with Ness, and I was doing stuff with Father MC, and I was doing stuff. I was definitely doing a lot of work with Uptown.
Okay, if we step
I don't
back
want to
though.
go too far, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna
no,
stop.
we're gonna step back because I guess some of those songs would be interesting to start to hear though. But so you're saying that the very first you've got your publishing in place, and the very first thing that you know when we talk about Uptown was Nesto, it's starting to work with him, and that's how you got introduced to Andre. Was this before the situation with Guy, or had it was the first situation with doing Nesto and
Oh,
getting
that
into?
was no, God was before that. God was maybe like in 91 or something. See, I knew Aaron from the church. Like I told you, my church was popular. Everybody came to my church. Whoever
Okay.
was
I mean,
good singer to me.
Nesto was 92. Nesto was his first single was 1992.
Right. I started working with Nesto in 91 though.
That's what I'm gonna say because he was working on an album. Because you're talking about Horace Brown here, because there's one particular track that both Nesto Velasquez and Horace Brown recorded. We only ever got to hear the Horace Brown track, which was "Let It Rain." Did you work on
Let
that?
it rain, let it
Yeah,
rain, let
yeah.
it rain. The
Because
sun won't set at
Nesto recorded
night.
that as
Go
well.
around my way so that we can play. And I can. That's the song you're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So was you singing background vocals on that?
Probably. I worked on, yeah, I probably co-wrote that. And I worked with Lede, which was one of the groups
Hold on,
at the time.
Nesto Velasquez. He's got an unreleased album, probably like you have somewhere in the Mulls Uptown days. Was you singing background vocals on the Nesto Velasquez album?
I sung, I produced, and I wrote on those
Do you
projects.
know a track called Banking that he sang?
Give me all your banking. I know every list of, I
Wow.
was, yeah. And James Jones. Yeah, I know all
You
those
don't
songs.
understand. We waited when we first heard your record on Uptown that come out on a soundtrack. We waited for your album. When we first heard Nesto Velasquez personality, we waited for his album. It's very similar to the Tammy Lucas situation in that we heard a voice on different tracks. We only ever got one single from her really, and we never got
Mm-hmm.
that album that we was dying for it to come out. So it's in. I didn't know that you worked on Horace Brown and Nesto Velasquez albums.
Yeah, I worked with them.
That's
Mm-hmm.
just this is what we're
I
finding.
know all of those Nestor, so that's why I'm able to sing them 40, how many years later off the top of my head, like I just heard them yesterday.
I've
Because
only
I
heard
was,
like obviously the single personality, and I've heard three more tracks that he recorded. There was the
Let It
Banking, there
Rain.
was Let It Rain, and there was another ballad. There was like this 6 minute ballad, which is incredible. I can't
And
remember the
another
title.
one, If It Were Me and You, Would Never Be Lonely. I think Andre singing. Yeah, I remember all of those songs.
So
I
did
don't
you
know
do
all.
Horace Brown's Uptown album? Because he's got an unreleased Uptown Records album. Did you do?
I worked with not the stuff that he did on Motown, but stuff. Yeah, me and Horace was supposed to do a duet together when we were on Uptown.
So you worked
But
on
they
that
wanted me to
unreleased
sing some
Uptown album
song
that Horace did?
about they wanted me to sing a song about like having an abortion, and I was like, I'm not doing that shit. So those were some of the problems that were like back to the other gentleman that asked, was it, beneficial? Like it made me like have a voice to know, like, I don't have to do that, you know.
So do you think that like you basically contractually free? So you weren't tied to anyone, so they couldn't force you. They couldn't hold
Well, I
anything over
did
your
wind
head.
up signing to Uptown. Yeah, I had a major deal with Uptown, but at the time we're speaking about, I wasn't signed yet. I wound
Now
up
when you look,
signing with Uptown in, I think, 92 or 93.
so I want in terms of the singing, because one of the things you talked about is your ability going back to your theatric days to be able to take a song and to be able to emotionally connect with the song and be able to go ahead and deliver the song with that emotion and feeling, which a lot of people can't. A lot of people, they can sing loud, they can project their voices. There's this whole melisma thing that they have, but it's rare. Like Michael Jackson used to be able to do that. He used to be able to, especially when he was young, he could take a song and he could sing it, and he could the lyrics and the music, he can attach whatever, he can connect with the song, and then the emotion and everything would come out where you could feel it. So when you look at having that skill set, so I want to talk about the skill of singing, because people think about people singing demos and females singing hooks, and they just thinking they're just singing. So can you talk about the skill that it takes? Because you kind of referenced that the situation with Howie, where you have to be able to sing. It may be a sample loop, and then of course later on there's the hooks. So can you talk about the skill that it takes to be unique and deliver those vocals on those songs that those producers are making?
I mean, for me, I think it's just natural being a musician, growing up around so many great people. You knew that you had to challenge yourself, because you wanted to be the one talked about. You didn't want to be the one that you want to be like, yo, you heard that new joint by, you wanted to be that person. So you pushed yourself, rather. I just grew up around so many great people that I had references of what good was, you know what I mean? And what okay was. And so I don't know. I just knew what was hot. What's hot. What's not hot. But I think that growing up around so many people that are just as dope as you, if not doper, gave you something to strive for. Like, I want to have a joint where they be like, yeah, Krista, you did that, yo, that's man, that's the mindset. The singing, I've been doing it all my life. I have so many awesome examples. Like my mom, so like when I was doing Mom, I Want to Sing, my mom was going to college to get her degree, and her minor was music. So I basically, and I was at that age, that preteen. She didn't want me home by myself because I was being fast with the boys and all of that. So not preteens, but pre-high school. So she would make me go with her to school, to her university, and I learned from Professor Dunn theory. So I was not only learning how to, just sing from the soul, but I was also learning theory and how to project and enunciate, and don't sing from your nose, use your diaphragm, and blah, blah, blah. So I definitely had an understanding on what exceptional singing versus, okay, they could hold a tune versus, nah. I knew what was dope and what would like. It has a lot to do with my lineage. My father, he played the organ. Like I remember our church choir. 13, 14, 15. It was two main influences aside from like, the Stevies and everybody else. It was the Clark sisters and the Bosch family. And I love Twinkie specifically because she produced. And I didn't even know I was going to be a producer at the time. I just knew, like, I had played guitar. I took guitar in junior high school, and I took piano in high school. So my brother played the bass, my father played the organ. I used to want them to shed and jam with me, but they never would because I played little country songs, but I knew how to read. And they'd be like, oh, that's cute. But, that made me want to understand, and I just always had an ear. Like, I could always hear. That's how I started producing. I was like, dang, I wanted a certain sound and I wasn't getting it. So I got one of my friends. I think the first sequence I learned was the MPC 60. Gordon Williams, Commissioner Gordon. He's a legendary engineer, producer, worked on Lawrence album. He's the one who showed me how to work the MPC 60. Once I learned how to work that, I was like, oh, if y'all don't give me what I want, I'm gonna give it to myself. So
Yeah. You know what's
I
going to
think
be
it has to
helpful?
do with the musical influence around.
I think what will be helpful is actually if we go through a timeline of around of your career, so then we can start filling in the gaps um because of your connection with Aaron, how did when he joined Guy and they came out with Groove Me, what was your thoughts of, oh, look at Aaron from church?
I remember seeing Aaron in the Red Parrot back in the day. It was like maybe 88, 87 or something. And Aaron used to stutter, and Aaron used to fib a lot. And Aaron was like, oh, I'm coming out in a group and this and that. And I always thought he was lying. But he introduced me to Teddy. And Teddy, had a name at the time. So I was like, all right, maybe he really, everybody knew Aaron could sing, you know what I'm saying, in church and just growing up or whatever. But I didn't really think he was coming out with a solo album. Until, like I said, I saw him in the Red Parrot. He introduced me. He was like, for real, coming out, blah, 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 blah. So when it came out, I wasn't surprised, always been very talented.
What did you make of the sound and what that, because that must have been new for you even as a New Yorker, the Groove Me and a whole New Jack.
That sound basically, we got a taste of it with Keith. So Keith kind of set the tone for what Teddy was doing with that Jack Swing. So because I Wanna was crazy, that whole album was a classic. So that kind of gave us a taste of what it was yet to come. By the time God came, God had New York City on lock. It was just that time. It just felt good. It just felt, to me, I didn't think of it as new. It was just more funky. It was like funky, hip hoppy, a lot of gospel, a lot of gospel chords and minor diminishes. So to me, it didn't really sound new. It just sounded like a hit. It just sounded funky. It just sounded funky more than, anything.
At the time when this was out,
That combination of hip hop and R&B.
yeah, at the time when that was coming out, what were you doing around that 88, 89?
I was on Broadway.
Oh, you were still on
I was
Broadway.
I was on Broadway around that time. Yeah, I was still on
Okay,
Broadway.
so what
And
year
I
did
was
you
doing
leave?
demos and things like that, but I hadn't really made a mark in terms of the music scene. I was just doing demos, working with people.
Then did
But
you
that was the
then?
Broadway era.
Oh, so is then when did Aaron invite you to Guy around the 1990
Not
or
the first album, that was for the
the
Future
second
album.
future?
So that
Yeah.
was in 91. I had just came back, like that was one of the
Okay.
reasons why I came back to New York.
Because Aaron said, "Can you come and tour with us?" Or what was the?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what was that like touring with Guy? Was it the new? It wasn't the new edition one.
No, it was the Future album.
No,
It was like
the
when that
tour.
guy had got, one of the security guys got
Yeah, so that
hit.
was they were touring with New Edition.
Yeah, but I didn't last long because I wasn't down with the bullshit. Like, People want you to screw them, and then you don't want to screw them, then they treat you funny. So it's like I was seasoned enough to know that I'm here to sing. I'm not here to be your sex toy and sing. So that goes back to what the guy asked. Like I was like turned off. Like, you know me my whole life, and now you trying to like make me uncomfortable, and I'm here to work. So then if I'm not compliant, as maybe some of the other young ladies may have been, then I'm being a bitch. So I remember one time this was right before we was getting ready to go to Japan, and Dinky Bingham was the
And music director.
yeah, he knew what was going on. Like it was real apparent, like what was going on. And I remember I just sat out, we was having rehearsal. And it was me and the other two background singers, and I just sat on the floor because I knew I was gonna get fired. Because I was like, I'm not screwing you, and I'm insulted that you got me here, like on and put me behind this kind of pressure. Now maybe I wouldn't have had that type of attitude or voice. I might have conceded to certain things or been uncomfortable or whatever had I not been seasoned. And I remember like years later, Teddy was like, had made mention to my brother, because my brother lived in Virginia. He was like, that's messed up how they did your sister. It wasn't Teddy. And it wasn't
Damien.
No, right, exactly.
How did that make you feel about I mean, as I said, the only person who's really been open about things like that is Mickey Howard, talking about what females experience in the industry. And I think until Me Too, most people just turned a blind eye. But did that make you more wary
See,
about
back then it was like you knew what was going on. It was just up to you as a woman to be like there was no Me Too or whatever these movements are now, or where you have people like, Cassie speaking out or whatever. It was more like you had to be that chick to be like, no. And that was it. And you would tell people like, yeah, such and such child. I was like, you better get off of me. And that was it. Like you just had to defend yourself. It wasn't like, oh, you can it was yeah, you just had to be tough as a chick, or you was gonna get taken advantage of.
and there was no fear of
I
by
guess
do
when it came to that, I knew that I knew, like, come on, man. No disrespect to the other young ladies, because they were talented, but they were not me. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, even if they were me, like, don't put me in that predicament where I gotta feel uncomfortable. And I'm working, but we didn't have any union, or you can go to HR. It's like, nah, you getting ready to lose that gig. Somebody else is gonna go to it. And I guess they did. And before they could fire me, I fired myself. Like I said, it was a rehearsal, it was a dress rehearsal. And I sat on the floor as opposed to standing up at the mic, like, I'm here, let's just make it. And then later on that night, Dinky was like, yo, but I knew it was gonna happen, because I knew that I was not going to fold. And now you're making me uncomfortable, and I should be having fun and singing. And the sad part about it is that's somebody that I've known since I was a kid. So, like we grew up in church together. He knows my mother. He knew my father. He knows my brother. So when you go through things like that with people that know deviants, I didn't mind getting fired, because I knew I would get something else. So
A lot of
that's
pressure
how
as
that
well.
happened.
A lot of pressure to go through as well.
A lot, and I was a kid. It's like, and again, I'm on my own. I've been on my own since I was 17. So, I needed my money to pay my bills. But you're not going to bully me. If that's the case, I could have, like, talking about the late 80s, early 90s, I could have got with a drug dealer and had him to pay my bills. That was very big in the 80s,
yeah.
in that era. You know what I mean? the outposts and all of that kind of thing. Like I'm focused on doing my work, and I don't want to have to feel forced to do anything. So that was one of the first like experiences that kind of left a bitter taste in my mouth, you know.
But then if this is around, so after this, then, so this is 91. What did you do next after you left the guy situation?
After I left the guy situation, not too far after that, I was working with a engineer, and you know, people would always gravitate towards me that, you know, either felt my vibe as an artist or as a songwriter or whatever. I linked with Eli Tupou. He's an engineer. He engineered for like Eric B and Rakim. You know, they say, "Yo, Eli, drop that beat." Yeah. So he would introduce me to a lot of different producers because he was an engineer. So I did a lot of stuff with him. Sorry, yeah. Ooh. Oh, look, now I can see all of y'all. I was I was trying to swipe off a text, and when I did it, now I finally see everybody. It's my first time seeing everybody at one time by accident. But yeah, so I was working with Eli, just working with a lot of different people. And then not too long after that is when my cousins came to New York and had me working with working with Nesto.
So think about Nesto, because I interviewed Jimmy Jenkins, and he was like, "Man, Nesto was going to be our Ricky Martin." What did you think about? Stevie's talked about the album. Did you think this was going to be big when you were working with him and doing his songs?
I definitely knew that there was a market for him being a Latino. I didn't realize how big that market was at the time. I think that they were definitely ahead of their time. It was kind of more like a hindsight type of thing, like once Selena and Ricky Martin and the Barrio Brothers, all of that was so huge. It's like, yo, Rick Gitron and them, we were on to something with Ness. But Nesto was, as you said, was Sheldon. He was very green. He was very new. He had never been around nothing. So they used to take advantage of Ness, and me and my cousin Andre, being children of season, we'd be like, now, mind you, Uptown has hired us, but we'd be telling Ness, like, nah, you supposed to such and such and such. I remember one time Nesto got mad at me because of something I don't remember. And he was getting ready to leave. I was like, you never leave your session. You're paying me. If anything, you should tell me to leave. So, like, even though we were beefing, I'm like, nah, you don't leave your session. You paying me. He didn't know anything like about the business. He was real green, real good-hearted guy. And they took advantage of him a lot.
So what do you think went wrong that he didn't come out with the album, since we've heard some of the songs? Did you ever find out?
I mean, the budget, that much money that was spent on Nesto's album, I don't know whether it was we're gonna write this off type of thing. I don't know, because he had good stuff. I think it was a mixture of, it could have been a write-off, take it or leave it type of thing. And then also because there was no other than like what, Menudo, which they were like specific, they weren't like trying to sell to a black market, soul, hip hop, R&B or whatever. They didn't really maybe know how to market Nas or whatever, but I do think that they were onto something with him if they would have stuck with it.
Back then, they didn't have a blueprint for a male. All you had were like the female freestyle artists, the Lisette Melendez's and people like that. That used to be on Fever Records, all the freestyle female singers. So you didn't have a male reference, which is probably why they weren't forward thinking in terms of trying to move forward with putting them out, like you just said. Yeah.
They didn't have a reference.
I heard a reason why. It was something to do with the production deal that Nesto had with Notorious B.I.G. And I think the whole
Say what
Notorious.
again?
He had a production deal. I think he was signed through with Notorious B.I.G. And that whole deal ended up going to Arista, and it just his album just
Nesto?
yeah. I'm sure there was. I heard he was signed something.
Nesto was signed to Rick Gidron.
So it's nothing to do with Notorious B.I.G. That's what I heard anyway. No,
Not at all.
all right.
Biggie came around to Uptown maybe 2 years after all of that. I mean, he was around. He was an artist on Uptown with Nesto, but at the time, Biggie hadn't even done Party and Bullshit yet. He was nobody. He was just coming up to the label just like every other artist hanging out up there. You know, Nesto was like one of the first ones after, I would say, Mary's project that they worked on like diligently. Puffy was, I mean, Big wasn't even on the radar. I remember when Biggie first started coming around Uptown.
You know, when you said you was in the studio at the time, you said in another studio was the three boys from Newark. I know that at the time they was working with Christopher Williams. They did some tracks with Christopher Williams. Was Faith Evans around
Yeah.
at the time?
She wasn't around yet, but she was around because Kayama is her eldest daughter's father. Actually, Kayama and I have worked on a few songs together this year.
Well, this is another. I'm trying to piece together because Faith recorded a bunch of demos with the three boys from Newark before. This was way before she worked with Puffy.
This was around that time.
Yeah. I'm gonna say, did you know about them? Did you even sing on them tracks?
I didn't sing on any tracks back then with them, but I knew about them. I knew Faith. Like I said, we were all working in, I want to say, was it called Giant? It was some studio downtown on Broadway that we were all working at. And so three boys from Newark would be there, Kayama. That's how I met all of them. Kayama, Faith, Ike Lee. And they were like buzzing at the time. They were dope, you know.
When did you record? When did you record "Loving You"? Then was that 92 or 93? Because it came out in 93. Yeah, your soundtrack record.
That's the I did not like that song. I'm sorry because I know y'all New Jack Swing lovers, but I did not like that song at all. Wow. That was more of a political thing. I did that. We recorded that in 92.
And do you not even like the jazz version that came out of it?
I like the jazz version, and I like the R&B version that Corey Rooney did. I did not like the original version because I felt like I knew, you know, okay, hey, hip hop, Pete Rock sample, but it just felt too contrived to me, and it wasn't me. You know, like it was not me. Because I'm a writer, I was able to write to it and that, but that I never liked it. I liked the jazz version that Corey Rooney did. And
who did the original one then? Who produced the original?
Me, Kevin McDaniels, and I can't remember. Some new guys.
Got the credits here. Hold on.
Don't believe all of that because they said James Jones wrote the song and he didn't write it. It was me.
Randy Fuller. It says produced by Randy Fuller and Kevin McDaniel.
Yes, Kevin McDaniel. Right? Yeah.
And it says it's wrote by you and James Earl Jones.
James didn't write that song. Okay. He didn't write one word. He ain't never got no publishing check for it. So back in the day, you would deal with that type of bullshit too. Whereas, okay, you know, I'm not the artist where you're gonna take my publishing because I'm not her. I was a little bit too seasoned for that. I was already signed to a publishing deal at that point. But if you know the game, you know all you got to do. If you put your name down on a song, then that's who they're calling for the next job. Okay. So even that had value in it. So you go into the A&R person and you putting down that you wrote, even though you're not getting any publishing, you're able to go get work from that.
Okay,
but
that makes sense.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. After the fact. Oh, no, we didn't mean it. Yes, you did. Just like they put Crystal. I was so mad about that whole Who's the Man project. Like Mary was out. Of course, you're gonna compete, they try to make y'all competitive, even though we're two different type of artists. I never felt like we were in the same. I never felt like she was my competition. I never felt like we was in the same category. But it's natural if we're both females signed to the same label for people to try to, compare or whatever. And then you put me out when they put the credits out, Crystal J. Johnson. I never said put Crystal J. Johnson. The reason why that was done, at first I was like, why y'all trying to make me Mary J. Blige, Crystal J. Johnson? There was a Crystal Johnson that worked at Uptown. And I guess she wanted people, she took it upon, because she was the same person. And we real cool too. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's real cool. But I guess she wanted people to know that it wasn't her. Like, who else? Why did you put that middle initial there? So now it makes it seem like I'm trying
Mary
to compete
J.
with
Okay.
Mary J. Blige. But it really had to do with the fact that it was a Crystal Johnson that worked at Uptown and Crystal Johnson that was an artist. And I guess I'm not going to say she did it, but somebody wanted to make the distinction of the two and never considered the fact, like, that's why you never see anything else. Nothing else that I've ever done has that initial, because that was not co-signed by me.
So when you talk about
the record got you out there though, because everyone was talking about you.
I'm just saying in terms of that, just the initial thing.
Yeah.
That, like,
but when that soundtrack dropped and we heard "Loving You," all the fans of hip hop soul, New Jack, were talking about you. I remember there was a guy over here. He was a producer. He was working with MCA in London. A guy called Johnny J, and he was saying I remember him saying to me, "What's hot at the moment? Who's hot in America?" And I said to him, "There's this girl just come out on Uptown called Crystal J. Johnson." And he goes, I can get anything from MCA to remix or do something with. And I says, go after this girl. I didn't know who you were. On that, like you say, that got you out there. Whether you like the record or not, it got.
No, I definitely, but
there.
not so much here in the States though. I get more people to talk about "Loving You" from London and the UK than
got
here.
Played a lot. That record got played a lot over here.
Not here.
Wow.
Not here. Not here. It was just an album cut.
Yeah.
When did you record "Unfaithful" then?
Dang. Unfaithful. I did that with Mark Spark.
Was that around the same time? Was this all being recorded for Uptown? And
this was all like 92, 93. So
was this all supposed to be going towards an Uptown album?
Yeah.
I figured so. Because
Yeah.
that again, it's a great record.
Yeah. But they didn't.
So your name is floating around, and then you're getting a lot of work. And then there's two records that you're on that really stand out, and that's pretty much, I was familiar with a lot of the soundtrack records, and then the Heavy D record on the Blue Funk. But then, obviously you're doing the R&B vein, but then you're sliding over, you're still doing the hip hop situation, and it's two dope records that you were part of, you collaborated with. Obviously, one is the Mobb Deep's Temperatures Rising, and then the Pete Rock and CL Smooth Take You There. 1-2 combination. Can you talk about going into the studio sessions and creating those records, and what was the process and your role in that collaboration?
Sure. At that point, I was estranged from Uptown. I don't think that I was signed to. I might have been signed to Uptown still, but I was definitely like, I'm not doing a record with y'all. And I think maybe they didn't believe me, but I was so serious. So at that point, I kind of got blackballed, I guess, because I was like very 10 toes down on the fact that, like, after, I had been so compliant, and then you have to realize I was offered a very lucrative deal by Quincy Jones. Quincy pulled me out to his house for the whole nine. I was gonna sign with Quest, but other stuff happened. We can get to that if you want. But it made me bitter when they were trying to have me sing songs about having abortions and shit like that. And I'm like, that's not who I am. That's why when Jackie had said, how Andre wanted her to be, I was like, I can relate, because they wanted me to sing a song about an abortion. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And I don't care if y'all think I'm difficult, because I'm telling you I'm not doing that. So at that point, I was like really jaded and bitter, like with the way they try to like just control you. So I was like, I'm cool with just writing and living my life. I don't need to be no artist. This is not exciting to me. Like, y'all think I'm doing this for fame and form and fashion. I signed autographs at 11. So I'm not excited by this. I want to be an artist. I want to really represent myself and be comfortable being my true self. So hip hop really kind of showed me love in a time where I was blackballed. But all of the producers and stuff, they loved me. They would always call me, like I was working with everybody. Not just them songs. I did so much stuff. So Pete and I, had established a relationship through the whole Uptown affiliation. And he were calling me to do, a lot of different stuff we had already done, got me waiting. So I remember him calling me and saying, come down to Green Street. CL had done his rap, but they didn't have a hook. They didn't have like a concept. But I had a song that I had written for myself. And it was CJ, what you gonna do? So I just took it and recycled it and took CL and replaced CJ, which is my initials. And that's how we came up with Take. So that was like a real quick session because I already had it written. It just fit. Because of Take You There is how I wanted to get in on Mobb Deep's project because Tip, loved the song, but then, as hip hop producers, it's that healthy competition. So he was like telling me about a project that he had gotten, commissioned to work on, which was Mobb Deep. But, I was familiar with them a little bit from the Juvenile Hell, I think, album. But I didn't really know, that they were like the buzz of New York at the time. So they had Loud had hired him to work with Havoc on a few of the joints, and he was like, "I got this joint I want you to work on." Maybe a year before we even did it, and I remember him saying, "I want you to kill it like you did that peak, that healthy competition. Like, yeah, I want to get me a banger with her, you know." The producers had that healthy level of competition. So maybe about a year later, we did the session. It was Tip and Havoc. He wasn't there. I think Pete was sick at the time. And they just had me come in. And I remember it was being like a one take Jake type of thing. And I didn't like that either when it first came out, only because I didn't think he was going to use all of the stuff at the end. I thought that he was just gonna, take a hook, maybe a riff here, whatever. But it's like a whole 2 minutes, and I'm my worst critic, so I'm like, oh, this sounds horrible. Why did he leave that? But I definitely was wrong in that because that's one of the songs that people talk about the most that I've worked on, and we did the remix, so Temperatures Rising remix that I wrote, and I also did the bass line. I came up with the bass line, and I had Tip singing the octave lower under me. I remember that. I also did Survival of the Fittest remix with Mobb Deep and G. I was doing a lot of stuff with G.O.D. Part 3 remix. I was doing a lot of stuff with Mobb Deep and Loud. They definitely showed me love in a time where, like, I wasn't really working in R&B like that.
I guess probably maybe a great time just to understand when you did have your Sony deal and there became this competition between Quest, which is Quincy Jones' label, and Uptown. I know when Timmy Gatlin said that they were going to sign with Tommy Boy, but Andre outbid everyone, and that's why they went to Uptown. What was the situation when came to you to give you a deal when you had
Well, Andre had
Sony?
offered me a deal, like I said, when I during the time that I was working with Nesto.
Yeah.
But in the interim, other people started offering me deals. So This was around the time he had gotten that 50 million. And he's like, you need to come over here, money and this and that. And I really was going to sign with Uptown, but then Quest and Mike Stratford, who had just transitioned from being a program director at KJLH, he is now like the VP of our A&R at Quest. So he really liked my stuff, and he liked my production. See, so when I signed the Sony, you know, they would have me in their recording studio. I was producing. I was learning how to produce and working on stuff like that. So for me to have Quincy Jones endorse my production, not just my songwriting, not just me being a singer, but me as a producer, gave me a certain level of confidence. And Andre and them matched that in terms of deals, to go back to what you were saying, Sheldon. So I bypassed all of those production deals. I wound up signing to Uptown through my production company. It was Chrissy J Music. I was signed to Chrissy J Music.
Wow.
So because of that bidding war with Quest and all of them, like I was able to get like almost with bumps, considering, you know, if you go platinum. And I had a 2 or 3 firm record deal, meaning if I ain't sell no records, they still had to put out another one. I think I had like 18 points, something like that, with bumps. So I had a really good deal. I got like a 6 figures. I had a studio. I got my MPC. I got my little studio set up. So he matched the energy of of Quincy. But then when it came time to like production, then it was like, we want the, like I did 2 or 3 songs with Kyle West. They didn't like them. It was smashes. I co-produced Unfaithful. They didn't like Unfaithful. And I kept doing a bunch of songs, and the way my deal was structured, because I had a production deal and it was like my first time, they didn't like say, here's your half your money up front half. They gave it to me in thirds. So everything that I did as far as production, we had to sign off on. So in other words, you're not gonna give me no money for this song if you don't like this song. You're not gonna give me no money to mix this song if you don't like. So they had me do all of these songs, and like, and then they wanted me to work with Devontae. And I remember I sat with Devontae, and Devontae was like, what's up with them songs I heard? Like, he had to hear some references to be able to, he was like, those ain't nothing wrong with them songs. And that made me know I wasn't bugging, because y'all coming to him to produce for me, and he's saying the stuff that she got is banging. But I don't think they knew what to do with me, because again, I wasn't this new artist. I did have a vision. I did have a sound. I didn't mean I knew everything, but I knew who I was. I was writing hits for other people. You know what I'm saying? While I'm on your thing, they didn't like a lot of, like, it's like, to me, Uptown's sound for R&B was limited. It was very much Gap Band, Stevie Wonder sound. And that's like kind of where it went.
Would you say that it was like really formulaic, where it was just in that one lane, even though they were good at what they did, but
it was one lane. It was a formula.
yeah.
It was a formula, and I'm not hating on the formula. I just didn't want to be stuck in no box and no formula. And like I said, I was dealing with stuff where they wanted me to sing songs like about having abortions. I'm not doing that. Y'all want me to be hurt, like Jackie said. You want me to be in pain. I want to sing about life and love and happiness and fun, and I'm not doing that degrading shit. So I remember my grandmother had passed, and something just made me say, you know what, I'm not doing no album with them. And I knew I wasn't going to do an album with them. I didn't know what I was going to do. That was like 94. And maybe about a year afterwards, I remember Andre calling me down, because I'm still signed. I'm just not working with them. He called me down to his factory, and he was like, you ready to come home? I always loved Andre. I never really had a problem with Andre. Andre would assign different people like James Jones or Tim Dog and them different people to be A&Rs, and they just had their own vision. They was all trying to follow behind Puff. So which means they're trying to make me Mary. I don't want to be Mary. I'm not trying to be none of that. I want to be Crystal Johnson. And so that was the problem. But in terms of Andre, I definitely believe that he always believed me. He had me, a car service picked me up. He was like, "You ready to come home?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "I'll give you $1 million or something, $1.5 million or whatever." And I'm saying to myself, why are you gonna give me $1 million and I'm already contractually obligated to you? That doesn't make sense. So I ain't really take him seriously. I wound up going home, and maybe about 3 weeks later, my attorney was like, Andre's leaving Uptown, because I had a key man clause in my deal. So because of that whole bidding war and everything that was going on, it afforded me, the opportunity to negotiate more for me.
Mm.
So I was like, Andre, I need a key man clause in my deal. If you ever leave Uptown, that I get. He was like, "This is my company." I said, "Okay, so then you should have a problem putting it in there." And we fought tooth and nail over that, but they wound up putting it in because that was the only condition that I would sign. So I wound up getting out of my deal, owning my masters and everything, because I had the keyman clause. And so when he did have me come down to Hit Factory, he really was serious. He just wasn't at liberty to tell me, "I'm leaving Uptown, I'm going to go to Motown." But he knew I had that keyman clause in my deal. He knew that once he was gone, I was out of there. So that might have been a year from the time that I was like, I'm not doing this, that I got out of there. So it's like, in a way, I won, but that made people mad too, because I got out my deal.
What about the stuff you did with Cal West then? What happened to the tracks you did with him?
Nothing. I did Kyle West. Who else did I work with? Mark Sparks. Can't even remember, but I know Kyle, and they was totally against Kyle. I didn't get it.
I mean, he does all the Albie Show stuff and the girls, and
I didn't get it. Though I'm talking about, we did this one song called "Closer." It was really dope. We did. I can't remember the other song, but yeah, they didn't even give it a shot.
where are those songs now?
I got them. I got Dax and all of that stuff.
Were you ever going to release them since you owned them?
Oh, man, I know I gave Milton. I let him put up the on Facebook on to whatever. That's another one of the songs that we did. I don't know.
How
They're
did you
there,
end
but
up
they're
on,
good stuff.
how did you end up on Usher's album?
Through Puff. Puff had, well, actually, I worked with Usher, with Dave Hall, when Usher was first signed, and they had Dave Hall. I guess they were trying to figure out his sound or whatever. And then Puff took over the project, and he wanted me to work on it. He introduced me to LA, and I worked on like the first half of it. But during that time, that's when I was like, basically just sitting around, not doing anything as a solo artist. And then he wound up signing Faith. So she took over that, which is understandable. That's his artist. He's gonna look out, But I worked on the first half of that project to Puff.
What did you make of that album? Because that's my favorite Usher album.
Really?
Yeah, I
Really?
don't. Yeah, it's my
That
favorite
debut
Usher.
album is fantastic. It's a
It's
great
probably
album.
the least selling, but it's probably the best one that every track. Yeah.
It was a cool experience. Herb I've known since I was a kid too, from the church. He used to play bass with my father on my father played at the Century. So I know Herb since I was a kid. Like a lot of us, that Brooklyn church scene, we all knew each other. So Aaron, Herb, a lot of us, Stanley Brown, a lot of us came up together.
Oh, you keep the impression that you didn't like that Usher album, or you almost as if, oh,
No,
so
I like it. Yeah, I'm just surprised that that's your favorite.
of all of
I
his
just,
albums, that's by far his best. But I mean, I know the others sold more, but that debut album, probably a little bit too mature for him, but those were solid songs, probably a little too mature for him. But
yes,
they were,
that he was like, when I first met Usher, he was like 11 or 12. By the time we worked, that's when I was working with him, working with Dave Hall. And then by the time Puff, I think he was like 13 or 14. He was a little kid.
yeah, but that's a solid album.
I mean, Crystal, what did you recorded in an era of New Jack and hip hop soul, the stuff that we love, this channel is about. I get the feeling you I get the vibe you're not really into it. My question to you is what is it you really wanted to do back then as a singer?
Not into what?
I
New
feel like
Jack
you're
Swing
not
and hip
just
hop soul.
that whole
No,
sound
I
at that
love
time.
New Jack Swing, but I just didn't. It was just that song specifically. Like I didn't like the song. It was a political thing. I did it, of course, because
I
that's
don't
what
mean
we
just
do.
that song, but what did you really want to do? If it sounds like you wanted to do something else, I'm thinking why you're around Uptown Records and they had a certain sound, but you're saying that I didn't really want to do that sound. So what is
Yeah,
it you wanted
but
to
at
do?
that time, it wasn't necessarily to me. At that time, to be honest, New Jack Swing was on its way out.
Yeah, well, so we're getting
So
into hip hop soul.
why am I doing a New Jack Swing song? Like to me, I wanted to do something new. This wasn't 88, 89 when New Jack Swing was popping. This was 92, 93 when it was more, not so much New Jack Swing, but hip hop R&B. That's two different things. So I'm versatile. I did it. They had the track. It was clearly New Jack Swing. I just didn't like the track. Not because it was a New Jack Swing track. It was because to me, the beauty of that track was Pete Rock. Like I didn't just hear that as an R&B track. That's just me personally. But because I'm a writer and I have been acclimated to writing to samples and stuff, working with Howie, working with I work with all of the hip hop producers from Clark Kent, Howie T, Pete Rock, Tip. I don't work with all of them, like all of them producers. So I know how to write. If you want me to write this track, it's not like it was my album, like it was a soundtrack. So a soundtrack, somebody come to you, they might come to you with the track already. You're just trying to get us on a soundtrack and get that mechanical license and get your song played. So it wasn't my project, so I wrote it, but I definitely enjoyed and liked the jazz and R&B version.
So
But
do
it's
you
not
think
that I
that
don't like New Jack Swing. Of course I love New Jack Swing. It's just that at that time when that came out, I think that it's safe to say New Jack Swing was like on its way out.
so would you say
Am I
that
wrong? Am I wrong in that?
I felt Loving You was the right record in that year. It sounded 93. If you look to what SWV were doing, it was the sound of that record was bridging New Jack and hip hop soul. It was a hybrid. It was the perfect record that year. But I just, as a whole, I get the feeling that what everyone was doing on Uptown, you didn't really want to do. I feel like did you just want to be a straight soul singer? Did you want to record
Yeah, of
an
course.
album
Yeah.
like Angela
But I was
Wingate, like
led to
Whitney?
believe that that's what I was going to be.
You
Yeah.
was on the
You're
wrong
right.
label
yeah,
then. You was totally on the wrong label then.
but
Based.
it seems like her skill set, it was like with a lot of those artists from that time period, those artists couldn't, as good as they were, as good as they could sing, it seemed like those artists from that time, they couldn't really function. They needed a producer. A lot of them had the raw talent, and then they needed a producer. But it seems like in Crystal's situation is that her talent was just as significant as a producer, and she was independently talented. So she kind of,
I
like
was
you said
producing this.
earlier,
I was co-producing the
yes,
stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
And then when I look at that era, when you saw the whole, let's talk about the New Jack Swing, hip hop soul, the whole visual presentation of it. There's the dancing and the background dancers and stuff like that. Was that your vibe? Was that your lane when you look at that? Or did you see yourself more just think you singing without having all
I
the
felt
other
like I said
extra?
to you, I was going to sign to Quest. The reason why I didn't sign to
Mhm.
Quest, and this is an exclusive, I've spoken about it, but never really said in detail because I just try not to be messy, but I'm grown and I can say what I want to say and it's not nobody can do. I was going to sign the Quest. I definitely had a love for, it's not like I didn't like what I was doing on Uptown. Don't get me wrong, Stevie. I definitely
Mhm.
enjoyed it. It was young, it was today, it was what was popping. You know what I'm saying? Who didn't like Guy? Who didn't like Teddy? Who didn't like Heavy? But that didn't mean that that's who I was as an artist. Like I told you, I don't know, like, I'm not the type of artist that wants to sing songs about having abortion. Like that's
It
what
seemed,
they wanted me to do. And
it
to
seemed like
me,
you were more cosmopolitan, so to speak, is that you had so many different ingredients in what you brought to the table. You probably would have been a perfect fit for Quest because Quincy came from that same type of situation, and that's something that he would appreciate it, he connected with. So when you look at the type of female artists that he would work with, the young ones like the Tamiyas and people like
right.
that, it seemed like you would have been not necessarily in that lane.
I think I would have had a little more hip hop or a little more of that grit to me than Tamia per se, but not necessarily what Uptown, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
not only that, you know what I'm saying? And I was going to sign, like I said, after Quincy flew me out to Cali. I met also with Joe Busby because he wanted to sign me. I was going to sign with Quest. What happened is at the time, Quest was being distributed by two distributors, one being Warner Brothers, and the other one was Reprise, right? So they took me around to meet everybody because, the way it worked, I believe, like maybe one album would be on distributed by Reprise, one would be distributed. So it was imperative that I knew the staff at both Reprise and Warner. So when I was out there, they took me around to meet everybody, all of the executives at both Warner and Reprise, as well as at Quest. I had already made up my mind I was going to sign with Quincy. I felt like I could learn a lot from him, like just looking at what he did with Michael. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think because he was older, I couldn't learn from him because whatever may have been outdated, if there was such a thing with him, I felt like I had as being a first generation hip hop baby. I'm already working with all of the who's who of hip hop. So if I want to infuse that into my soul sound, I already know the top producers or whoever else to get, right? So I was really stuck on signing with Quincy and had made up my mind. That was around the time they were doing the Uptown Unplugged, because I was supposed to be on that, but I was out there at the time with Quincy. So I didn't think I was going to be on the Who's the Man soundtrack and all of that because it was kind of like predicated like, well, if you don't sign with us, we're probably not going to use your song on the soundtrack type of thing, which was fine with me. I made up my mind I was going to sign with Quest. And then I got a phone call from an executive at Warner Brothers who was basically trying to snake Quincy and have me sign to Warner Brothers. And my mind was like, Dag, if you would be that bold to try to snake Quincy, and if I don't sign with you, then that means that I'm subject to maybe not pushing my project. And that was Benny Medina. So now all of a sudden, and this is my first time ever saying it, so y'all got an exclusive. I spoke about it before, but I didn't say the name. But what happened is I got home and I'm getting calls from him and his assistant wanting to sign me. And I'm like, Dad, I met you through Quincy. If you would be bold enough to do that to Quincy Jones, you know. So it was like, Dad, here we go with this business shit. You know what I'm saying? I just want to create. I don't want to be caught up in nobody. I've had other instances similar to this where I was caught up in some executive stuff. I have nothing to do with it. I'm just a talent. So they knew, you know, we were negotiating back and forth with attorneys. Deal was almost done. And all of a sudden, so Mike Stratford is calling me, trying to figure out what's going on, what happened. I didn't want to say anything. Now I don't want to be in the middle of this politics and whatever else. I'm just a singer. I'm just here to do my, you know, my thing. They kept being adamant. I finally told Mike Stratford, and then Quincy just started calling me, and this is when the little cassette things was out on the voice. This is before voicemail, so you had the little, and he was calling, Crystal, darling, it's Quincy, pick up the phone, darling. And I'm like calling my Suzette at Sony. I'm like, Quincy keep calling me. I don't know what to do. I was like not wanting to be in the middle of that mess because I knew that what he had done was not right and there was going to be a problem. And I'm like, Dad, I don't want to be in the middle of this, but now I have to trust this man to push my record. So that's why I signed Uptown. So I guess I was a little disappointed when the vision that they had for me wasn't aligned with the vision I had for myself. And me knowing that the vision that Quincy had was more in alignment. So when I left Uptown, I spoke to Quincy and Mike, and I was gonna go, but it was like this was, you know, before I got released because of Andre going up Motown. I had Capital and Quest, and basically Andre agreed to let me out, you know, with, you know, getting his money back and this and that. But the stipulation was, and we didn't find out to the end, was like basically he wanted everything after first record sold without hooping. So that made other labels basically saying, we can't give you a couple of $100,000 to get me out the deal, and after whatever the points that we agreed upon. I'm search, you know, off the top of the head, talking about 30, 40 years ago, whatever. So yeah, 30 years ago now. But so it didn't wind up happening. I had to sit around for a year and then I got out of my deal. By that time, I didn't even really want to be signed in a label. So you're right, Steve. It's not that I didn't want to be on Uptown. I just don't think that they saw we didn't have the same vision.
But then,
whereas, like I said, with Quincy, I think that he would have allowed me to develop my sound, whatever that was, you know.
did he ever know what Benny did behind his back?
Who, Quincy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I told him. I had to tell him why I wasn't going to sign. We were getting ready to sign the deal, and he's like, what's going on? He kept calling me. I still have that cassette somewhere in storage, the little cassette. He kept calling. And Suzette Williams, that song, she said, you can't not return his call. I was just so nervous and uncomfortable with being caught up in some stuff that I didn't really have nothing to do with. Like, you know.
How did he take it?
Not good. I'm just, you know, I've heard that, yeah, still. And when I put up my solo project, my indie project in 2011, Mike Stratford came out and he did an article and did a real big, right, you know, like he came out in support. He was like, this is my artist that got away. I know he wound up signing like, what's the guy's name that was signed for us? He's really good. I can't think of his name. You know him. He's a soul singer. I can't think of his name.
Young singer? Is he young? A younger singer?
Probably in the same age range. I almost said his name. He's like a soul singer. He's like oh man, he was signed to Quest. I can't think of his name.
Oh, okay.
It
No,
keeps coming to the tip of my tongue and then it's leaving.
yeah, but
Like I think he sung the, opened up with Shaka and oh man, his name keeps coming to my tip of my tongue. You know him.
Was it Keith Washington?
No, before Keith. No, after Keith rather. No, more funk and soul. Not Keith is more pop.
Yeah.
Oh man. He, he sings high, it's the high notes, like the
Like, is he like a Maxwell type singer?
but different, more.
I know who you're talking about because he was on one of Quincy's albums. He was
Yeah,
one of the vocals on one. I know you're
his
talking
name
about.
is escaping me. He's like very soul funk.
oh, are we talking
Yeah.
about Jeffrey? Not Jeffrey Dahmer, but
Not Jeffrey.
James
His
Ingram?
name is- No,
No,
no.
James Jacob was
He's
the
younger
80s.
than that. He's younger
He was
than
on the
that.
same. He was on one of the last albums that Quincy Jones did.
He's like an Omar. Or he's like, he's
Yes,
soul.
yes, yes. Because he had
Yeah,
like
his
an
name
afro. I know you're
is.
talking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
his name. I don't know why it's escaping me. I know his name, and every time I get ready to say it, then it disappears from my brain.
Because he goes
Like it
by
just
like
came
one
again.
name. He goes by one name. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. But when you talk about that situation with the Benny Medina thing, uh, it's strange because just when you describing that, just before all that is happening, him and Benny are going in. Quincy and Benny are going into business doing the Fresh Prince situation. So it's crazy
Well, no, this
how
is after that. Wait a minute. When did Fresh Prince come
Fresh
out?
that comes out like 90, 91-ish time.
Yeah, so this was after Fresh Prince. Yeah, this was
Wow, and they
after,
still did
which is like I
business.
said, I felt like I was his name not Raheem Devon. Damn, his name starts with an R. The
Remy
guy that
Sean?
Rashad
Rashawn
Was it
Patterson.
Patterson.
Remy?
Rashad
Rashawn
Rashawn
Patterson.
Patterson.
Oh,
Patterson.
right.
Yes,
That's
yes.
who Mike wound up signing. It's Rashawn Patterson. I wasn't gonna sit still until no. This was after Fresh Prince.
Mm.
And
Wow,
so
and
I'm like,
it's
man,
still
y'all put me
business.
in the middle of something that's so much deeper than me. And I don't want to be in the middle of it. I just want to sing. But I did understand.
Rashan Patterson signed to MCA. What? He wasn't with Warner Brothers.
He wasn't. Well, I know that
He came out on MCA Records.
he did. Well, I want to say that Mike signed for Sean Patterson. Yeah, I want to say he did. But maybe, yeah, he has something to
He might have been like his manager or something like that. I remember
something.
seeing his name. I remember seeing his name on Rashawn's albums, but that was
Yeah.
his artist. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike Stratford, yeah, because he wrote about it and it was like he was saying that Rashad was the closest thing, like because he was so excited about bringing me to Quincy and signing me and everything, and I had made up my mind that I was going to because I felt like they would have understood me as an artist. Not that I didn't think that Uptown wouldn't, but I didn't know that it would be like some of the A&R. Like I remember one time I had gotten into it with James Jones because I'm singing and he's gonna come in and he came in the booth while I was recording to try to tell me how to sing the song. You're an A&R guy. You don't sing. And so I had him banned from my sessions that he couldn't come to my sessions. Because I was like, but I shouldn't have had to go through that. Why is an A&R telling me how to sing?
Yeah. During this time, then, what was your relationship with, say, Mary, who is on the label?
I know I sung, I mean, just label mates. Like she was always cool with me, nothing big. Like we didn't hang out or anything. I know I sung on the You Don't Have to Worry or no, soundtrack. Like I even like that track. So it's not like I didn't like a New Jack Swing style. I like You Don't Have to Worry. I didn't like Love You.
Okay, I mean, after the whole Uptown sitting out and missing out on Quest, and you are doing these things with the hip hop artists, do you then decide, when did you decide to go independent and do your own album and say, there's no point trying to go through a major and all the drama?
I just did well. It was that, but it was only that. Also, at that time, I had went through a big custody battle, adopted my cousin, foster sister. So I had other things that were more important to me. So I really wasn't like focused on being an artist. I was more focused on family, and whatever came with my art, as writing or whatever, you know. So I was kind of content with that.
And then did it take almost 10 years? No, well, not 10 years, maybe 6, 7 before you decide, okay, let me do my come and do
No,
an album.
well, like I said, I was from '95. I was always doing stuff independently. I put out like a couple of white label releases, but this was the beginning stages of independence. So I was independent. It was only but so much that I could do. You know what I mean? So by the time I did put out a project independently, it was more conducive. It was more inviting. You know, it was an era where you did have an artist. There was a platform for you to get distribution. And, you know, so I kind of had to wait it out, but I never stopped recording and you know, working on music. I just had to wait until something solid presented itself where I could just put it out. And even then, you know, like if you don't have a machine, there's only but so far you're gonna go as an artist. So
I noticed 2011 seemed to be an incredibly busy year for you, music wise.
yeah, that's when I put out The Day Before Heaven, which did better over there than here, you know. I think it went #1 on the UK soul charts. And like I said, I was just doing this by myself. I didn't have a machine or a team, you know. I just had a good project. I felt like, you know, I called on a lot of people that I had worked with over the years, Mike City, Herb Middleton, Dink Bingham, and myself did the production on
Stevie, how was the album received here in the UK?
it. Okay, like I said, I got more. I had like I had a couple of distributions. I was like in at the time we still had Tower Records. I had distribution with Tower Japan. I had, you know, a little bit of momentum. I went #1 on the UK soul charts and did a little bit here and there, but you know, definitely not as much here that it was there. I definitely got more attention because a lot of people. That's how I found out. Like what Steve said, I found out like a lot of people had been anticipating a Crystal Johnson project from overseas that I didn't even know about.
Do you remember the album, Stevie?
Yeah, got a lot of a lot of the soul DJs here played it on the radio. There was a remix with Fife coming home that was put out.
Yeah,
And a lot,
yeah.
you know what I mean? You know, people remembered you. Like I say, we remembered who you were.
Where are we at now then? Since all that has happened and your solo album that came out and stuff, where are you at now in your career?
In my career, as far as
Well, singer, songwriter, producer, Broadway star
well,
even.
I've been working on some stuff. Like I said earlier, I've done some stuff. I've been working on a few songs over the years and stuff. This year I did some stuff like 2 joints with Kayama Griffin. It's really dope. I did some stuff with Dave. Some stuff that I'm working on myself. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, to be honest with you. You know, the climate is just so it's not really inviting to I don't know. I don't know. But I know that I am working on a musical that comes out this fall. It's a comedy actually, which is a little different for me because I'm used to doing musicals. So this would be a good thing. I did over the years I've directed a few plays that I've done. So I did kind of like full circle get back into theater and stuff like that, which is why I moved back to New York. I was living in Atlanta for a while, and I moved back here because I know I wanted to do theater. But theater, New York is the mecca for that. So again, I just like being free as an artist. I don't want to be confined or controlled by any machine. And I'm glad that I've been like that. Like, you look at the climate of today and so many things that I dodged, so many bullets that I've dodged. Trust me, okay? Because I did use my voice, because I did say no, because I didn't let somebody just treat me like a puppet. And so now it's like a bittersweet thing, because now people get a chance to see what artists go through and how unfair and unjust it is. Me being an artist, championing, how you say it?
Championing.
Yeah, for artists in a time where it's like, get that bag, what's up? Like, you know how many people looked at me like I was crazy? You know this one, and you know that one, and you know Diddy, and then, and why you ain't this, why? Because it's a lot of stuff that goes on that people know nothing about. And it's really difficult to, my hat goes off to people that have been able to manage that. My hat goes off, because I haven't had to do that. You know,
So is it safe to say?
I'm sorry.
Is it safe? I'm sorry. Is it safe to say that basically, when you look at your entire career in the music business, you did it on your own terms?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so, to a degree. I mean, not all, you know, because nothing is going to go your way all the, you know. But at the end of the day, I had to realize that I'm not in this for the bag or for the fame or for the fortune and all of that. So if you never hear from me again, I've done enough. I got plaques all on my walls to show me that, yeah, you made a difference. I know that if I chose to subject myself to certain things, I could have had a lot more success. But I chose things that last. I have a child now that's grown that I can look at and say, I contributed to her life. I put myself and my life on hold to see that she had an upbringing that she probably would have never had. That's something I could look back and be proud about. If nobody else is proud, I could sleep at night. I could look at myself in the mirror. I could look myself in the eyes. There's a lot of things that this industry can lead you to where I know people that can't look themselves in the mirror. They can't look at themselves. I don't want to be like that. For what? So somebody can say they know my name? So somebody can sing along to a song? You can sing along to a song that I've done. You don't have to know my name. I take, like, that's I feel so bad for so many artists that have had to compromise their integrity, and they can't sleep at night. They got to do drugs. They got to drink themselves to sleep. They have to hang out with people that they don't like, or be subjected to things that they don't want to be subjected to. I've been in the rooms with all of these people. I was
There's a
there with
documentary.
the project with Puffy. I was there when he was a little boy, a baby.
Yeah,
So,
there's a documentary that came out some years ago. It's called "100 Feet from Stardom," and it talked about
100.
it's basically, yeah, 100 Feet from Stardom, and it was basically a documentary on all the female singers who were either background singers primarily, with a lot of famous singers, and it kind of went into their lives and their careers and things of that nature. And those things that you talk about, some of them kind of, they went into those stories. That they had unfulfilling careers, um, and going through that whole process. they had a lot of bad experiences, like you said, the drugs and alcohol and things like that. So, it's great to see that you came out on the other side, primarily unscathed, unlike a lot of people. So that's good.
Yes, yes. So to me, that's my that's my biggest win. I'll never stop creating music. I'm a musician. I'm an artist. I'm an artist. I'm not doing this for the bag. I'm doing this because I'm an artist. So I'm content with that. I've made good money in this game through being smart. From even my publishing deal, I wound up getting out. So I've been administering my own publishing since the mid 90s. Writing on projects like Dr. Dre's Chronic 2000, things like that. Just when you see, oh wow, that's a blessing, because if I were still signed to Sony or any other publishing company, whatever checks I've gotten would have been half, or even if that. So it's a wicked game, and it's a lot to demand of an artist to endure the stuff that they endure within this industry and still expect them to get up and perform and sing and write and be entertainment for people.
What about singing and live shows? Is that something that you get into anymore?
I'll do little stuff here and there sporadically. It doesn't stop. It's like sometimes people think because they don't see you on the television or they don't hear you, like that your life is not. I'm working. I'm still doing music. Whether I put it out, that's my choice. It's like whether I feel like going to that, because I've done it. Now, had I not ever done it, then maybe I'd feel away. But I did it in 2011. I financed it myself. I did all of that. Everything. You ain't heard it. You never heard it. He heard it. Stevie's heard it, but you never heard it. You never heard it. So it's like, you have to be mindful of what the artist has to go through just to put that stuff out. It's not easy.
What about your favorite? If we look back, just as your top 10 favorite track that you've featured on or sung on, what would land?
Would be my top. Would
Your
be my
top 10?
favorite song.
Yeah, top 10 songs that you either did backing, you wrote, or produced or sang lead in.
Oh wow. Well, I definitely Survival of the Fittest remix with Mobb Deep, I definitely is one of my favorites with them. I have to mention Temperatures Rising, because that definitely has gotten a lot of recognition for me. I would like the stuff that I did with a lot of stuff that I like probably has never heard the light of day. You know what I'm saying? You work on so many projects that never even come out, you know what I mean? As a songwriter, as a producer, or whatever. So who else? I'm trying to think. I don't know. I enjoy all of it. All of it is a part of my story.
Yeah. Did you ever cross paths with Tammy Lucas?
Yeah, I know Tammy very well. Yeah. She actually I did a play some years ago. She actually did a co-write on one of the songs. So.
My goodness. Well, Chris, it's definitely been definitely been fascinating just because I guess to most of us it's been some of the songs that I was a big fan of Heavy D and the Boys, having you on got me waiting.
Got me waiting. Yeah.
Got you waiting. A lot of the Uptown stuff that you did and some of the hip hop stuff. So it was, but I guess, like Tammy, just not having that breakthrough as we expected, but you've kind of explained a lot, and You know, for those of us who were fans of Moat Uptown, understood some of the challenges that Andre had, especially after Puffy left, and that sense of competing and moving on and stuff. So, unfortunately, we can see why we never got to see a Crystal Johnson album on Uptown. But by the sounds of it, what is inspiring is the fact that you didn't you actually business wise took care of things, which 90% of the people we've spoken to weren't fortunate enough to do so, and that's a testimony to that, and then hopefully new artists listening in would understand how important it is to take care of business before alongside the creative side. Um, just what final advice would you give to any new and upcoming female singer-songwriter?
Just know what you're really getting into. Is more to it than just being a creative or being a singer. It's a whole business to it, and be prepared for that, and live from the inside out. If you're passionate about what you do, live from the inside out. That way, you can't be affected by, naysayers or people that have their own vision of where you should be. You know what I'm saying? People always have um, their personal opinions. And if you're not strong enough, you'll let those people dissuade you from what you're passionate about. So I'm happy. I'm happy to have been to be a part of the arts and history, and to be able to sit and speak with you guys about things that I've done. If I never do anything else, I've done it. I've taken those chances. I've paid that dues. I've cried those tears. I've put in the work, and I have enough that I feel like I'm proud of my accomplishments, and I'm still doing. I'm still here. I'm still working. I'm still enjoying myself as a creative, and after that, I'll be on to the next. That's how I've been living my life. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what the
Yeah.
next is. I don't really try to plan it. It comes to me.
Yeah.
That's 3 words. You embody 3 words. That's poetry in motion. Poetry in motion.
That's right. Now, where are you from, Sheldon?
I live in Delaware.
But you're from Delaware?
No, I am from Gary, Indiana, from the Midwest as well. And I ended
Oh,
up here. I retired here about maybe 12 years ago. So
okay.
yeah, yep.
But you've always been like a music head or something?
Yes, always. Bought the music, I write about music, everything.
Oh,
So
okay.
yes. So very in tune into your career. I did a lot of research and just very inspiring. Just the pedigree where you came from. When you look back at that time in New York, used to be a creative and an artist, to be affiliated with the theater, the plays, and that's the first thing I thought of was Stephanie Mills. And you talk about the Timbuktu and Mama I Want to Sing, and you roll in with Vi Higginson and just everybody. It's just, when you come, so I can understand where you're at this juncture, because your career it's not singular, not confined to one era. It ebbs and flows. So when you have that type of background and history or whatever, it kind of it's sustaining. It's like I've done it. It's not something that, even though you didn't put out 50 records, 10 records, but you created. You were a performer. A lot of people from that era in the 90s and the 2000s and the late 80s, they are recording artists. They make records, but it's a difference between being a recording artist that makes records
Exactly.
versus
And an
being an
artist.
artist. Being an artist, and
Exactly.
that's the thing. So when everything stopped for a lot of these people, it was very devastating, because that was their lane. That's, and no disrespect to them, but that's what they're identified as, because everybody who came into the music business in that era, they came in as a recording artist, but you were already an artist. So I can see how Uptown, they didn't know what to do with you. They couldn't look at what you did and say, we need to go ahead and just put her out. She's independent. She's self-contained. You know, when I think about your gifts, I think about like the white singer-songwriters. They have all the autonomy. They have the push. They have the backing. But unfortunately, for a lot of Black artists who are creatively independent like that, they don't get that push. You have to come through the lane of a producer. So if the producer's not dominating the situation, you know, it's just unfortunate. So, but you know, you have a great body of work, great historic pedigree, and you know, we're glad to have you on the episode.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of Halftime Chat. Please remember to subscribe, share, and comment. But most importantly, why don't you become a member of Halftime Chat? We've got amazing videos, amazing perks, and being able to support the channel. But anyway, thanks for watching. Take care.
I never participated in that kind.
And somewhere in between
us for even loving us,
on which I didn't miss you.
What was it like growing up?
She's still making an impact on 4 houses down.
I have a couple of pieces.
trying to get this one and that one.
That works for me, but just for me,
No, okay, you're okay.
they don't understand what Jonas Boys are winning all spirits.
play it.
And all these guys, they all work together.
I mean, I love all different genres.